The first time I realized my family's love had conditions, it hit me like cold water in the middle of July. I was making pancakes for my daughter Lila on a Saturday morning, flipping the last one while humming a tune from a kid's show. Lila was perched on the counter, her legs swinging, her messy hair sticking up in all directions like she hadn't been convinced to brush it yet. I noticed her frown before she even spoke, the way kids do when they're trying to understand a feeling that doesn't have words yet. "Mom," she said, holding my phone like it weighed more than she did. "What does shame mean?" I froze, spat pancake batter into the sink, and blinked at her. "Why are you asking that, sweetie?" She hesitated, then slid the screen toward me. My chest sank. There it was, my mother's handwriting in a group chat I wasn't part of. But the screenshot was enough. All my children brought this family respect except Erica. She chose to be a lowly single mom. I no longer see her as my daughter. The words were sharp, surgical. I swallowed the lump forming in my throat, but I forced my face to stay neutral. Lila's small fingers gripped the edge of the counter as she waited for me to answer. Her eyes were wide, and the confusion mirrored the ache I felt in my own chest. "Sometimes grown-ups say mean things," I began slowly. "Sometimes they try to make others feel small." She blinked at me, not fully comprehending but knowing enough to sense the weight in my voice. "Why would they want to make someone feel small?" I exhaled quietly. "Some people think love comes with conditions, honey. They decide who deserves it and who doesn't. That doesn't mean it's true. That doesn't mean you or I did anything wrong." Lila nodded slowly, still staring at the screen. I placed my hand over hers and held it there, grounding both of us. At 8 years old, she didn't need a detailed lecture on narcissism or family politics. She needed a look, a tone, a steady presence to anchor her small heart. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about how many times my family had done this in subtle ways. Invitations never sent, phone calls never returned, my name glossed over in conversations like I was an afterthought. And now my mother had made it official, typing it out for everyone to see. My father gave a thumbs-up emoji. My sister Yvonne hearted it. My brother Philip typed agreed. My other sister, Molly, didn't even type. She just liked the message as if I were an object in a home decor app, not a human being with feelings. I went through the motions that evening, making dinner, folding laundry, tucking Lila into bed. My body operated on autopilot, but my mind was racing. I thought about how I had been careful, how I had always tried to please, how I had tried to blend in with the image my mother demanded. Nothing had been enough. Not my grades, not my work, not the steady life I built for myself. The moment I became a single mother, I had crossed some invisible line, and they had erased me. But I also knew something else. I wasn't powerless. And more importantly, I wasn't raising Lila to feel powerless either. The next morning, I explained boundaries in a way she could understand. "If someone tries to make you feel small, it's not your fault," I told her over cereal. "You can step back. You can protect yourself. You can decide who gets to see your heart." Her eyes shimmered with understanding that only a child could hold. She nodded and went to school with a backpack heavier with spelling homework than she realized. But I knew she carried something else too, the quiet lesson that strength doesn't have to be loud. That week, I made a decision. I would stop participating in the family's drama. I blocked my mother, my father, Yvonne, Philip, and Molly from my phone, my social media, my life. No explanation. No lecture. No pleading. Just silence. For too long, I had given them the power to make me feel invisible. Now I was taking it back, step by deliberate step. And in that silence, I found clarity. Lila and I didn't need the family that tried to shame us. We needed safety, love, and space to grow. That night, I sat at the kitchen table after putting her to bed, staring at the empty space where my mother's approval should have been. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I felt steady. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was building a life on my terms, not theirs. Because if they thought calling me lowly could stop me, they were wrong. They had underestimated the determination of a mother who refused to let her child inherit shame. The next few weeks were quieter than I expected. Not empty, not peaceful in a way that erased the past, but quiet in the sense that the chaos I'd lived with for years had finally been paused. Lila and I moved through our days like we always had, school drop-offs, lunch packing, and homework, but now there was a subtle lightness in the way I breathed. I wasn't waiting for permission to exist anymore. And yet, the family didn't forget. My mother, Phyllis, had never been subtle, and the group chat message wasn't the end, it was the beginning. Within days, I started receiving small, indirect attempts at contact. A forwarded message from Yvonne, asking casually if I'd seen the new family newsletter. A vague comment from Philip on a mutual friend's social media, tagging me as if I were still part of the circle. Each one was calculated, testing boundaries, seeing if I'd fold. I didn't. I stayed firm. Leela watched me carefully. Kids notice everything, and she learned fast that silence didn't mean weakness. One evening, while I was helping her with math homework, she looked up with that determined gaze only children have and said, "Mom, I think Grandma wants us to feel bad, but we don't have to." Her voice made my chest tighten. She was right. That was exactly what my mother wanted. Shame is a powerful tool, but it only works if you participate. I set the pencil down, took her small hands in mine, and nodded. Exactly, sweetheart. We decide what we take into our hearts, not them. Over time, I began to reclaim the parts of life my family had tried to manipulate. I stopped second-guessing invitations I never received, stopped worrying if my absence would cause gossip. Instead, I focused on building a life for Lila that wasn't contingent on approval from people who had repeatedly chosen image over love. I started small. A home project, reorganizing our apartment so that it felt truly ours. Every drawer, every shelf, a little assertion of control. And then I returned to work with a focus that surprised even me. Being a single mom had taught me patience, resilience, and the ability to solve problems under pressure. Those skills weren't invisible. They were marketable. Slowly, opportunities began to appear. A local bakery asked me to help organize orders, then a small cafe wanted me to help with scheduling and inventory. I worked nights, early mornings, whenever Lila was asleep. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. During this period, the family tried again. This time, my mother found Lila's school phone and left a voicemail. "Hi, Daisy, it's Grandma. Tell your mom I miss you. I have something special for you." I held the phone like it might burn me, hearing the practiced sweetness in her tone. Lila's face twisted in confusion and frustration. "I don't want anything special from someone who erased me," I said calmly. "We made a rule, no contact without my knowledge and explicit permission. No exceptions. Not gifts, not visits, not text messages. I wasn't punishing them, I was protecting us." And every time Lila saw me enforce that boundary, I saw the lesson take root. She wasn't learning fear or resentment, she was learning self-respect and agency. Months passed, and with each day, the business side of my life grew alongside my personal life. I noticed that many local small business owners were struggling with the same disorganization I had seen everywhere. They were drowning in schedules, invoices, and forgotten orders. I built a simple system, nothing flashy, just clean and functional. People started asking for it. Then they started sharing it. And then the requests grew faster than I anticipated. Lila watched all of this with her blunt, honest commentary. "Mom, you look powerful," she said one night as I typed away on my laptop after her bedtime story. Powerful. The word struck me. I hadn't thought about it that way. I wasn't just surviving. I was building something that could carry us, that could change our lives in ways my family never imagined. Then, one evening, the first public acknowledgement of our success arrived. Not from a press release I issued, not from social media, but through a local business newsletter. My system had been featured, and my name was there in print. I didn't share it with anyone. I didn't tag anyone. I simply let the recognition exist. But somewhere in the background, my family was bound to notice. And that's when I realized something important. Silence and accomplishment are louder than any words my family could ever speak. They couldn't gaslight our lives if we were living them fully. Lila was learning this too. She saw that the world didn't end because someone tried to diminish us. It simply became ours to navigate and conquer on our terms. By the end of that year, we had a rhythm. Lila was thriving at school. I was growing a business that demanded attention and respect. And every attempt my family made to wedge themselves back into our lives only highlighted how little control they had. The more they tried, the more I realized that our strength wasn't just in deflecting cruelty, it was in creating a life that didn't need their approval to be valid. Then came the first subtle test. A wedding invitation arrived, addressed to me. Not a family gathering. Not a casual brunch. A wedding with all the pomp and expectation that my mother had always relished. My chest tightened, but I didn't panic. I called Lila over and we read it together. Her small hand rested on mine, and I could feel the same quiet strength she had shown months ago, the same lesson that boundaries and dignity could be maintained even in the presence of those who tried to destroy them. I smiled down at her. We decide what this means, sweetie. And it's not going to control us. Lila nodded, her eyes shining with quiet conviction. That night, I realized our journey wasn't just about reclaiming space from a cruel family. It was about teaching the next generation how to live with power, dignity, and self-respect. And if they didn't like it, that was their problem, not ours. The calm we had built began to feel fragile the day I received an unexpected email from an event organizer. First glance, it seemed routine, a request to confirm details for a local business awards night where my system had been nominated. But the sender's words carried an undertone I immediately recognized. My heart sank as I read the next line. Please confirm that Erica's family is attending to support her. Are they authorized VIP guests? I froze. The email wasn't accusatory, but it forced me to confront the reality I had been trying to keep at bay. My family had noticed our progress. They wanted to insert themselves, not to celebrate, but to reclaim a narrative I had carefully crafted for myself. I set the laptop aside and walked to the kitchen where Lila was finishing her homework. She looked up at me, sensing the tension in my posture. They want to come to an event, Mom, I said quietly. They think it's about them. Her eyebrows knitted together. But it's your event. Yes, I replied, kneeling to be eye level with her. And we get to decide what that means. Remember what we talked about? Who controls our story? She nodded, small but firm. We do. I smiled, feeling a mixture of pride and sadness. I had spent years trying to make them see reason, trying to earn love that had never been unconditional. Now all of that effort was unnecessary. Power wasn't in convincing them, it was in protecting ourselves and standing tall. The week before the awards ceremony, subtle signs of intrusion continued. Yvonne sent a text under the guise of excitement. Mom and the family are so proud. Don't be stubborn, call us. Philip sent a message through a mutual contact, congratulating me but adding a caveat. We hope you know we're here if you need anything. And my mother, Phyllis, she didn't attempt to reach me directly yet. She was gathering her image, rehearsing it in her mind like she was preparing for a stage. I didn't respond. Not a word. Every attempt to make me feel guilty or obligated bounced off my carefully built walls. I had become practiced at turning away their manipulation, at refusing to allow old wounds to dictate our present. Lila observed all of this silently, absorbing the lesson that strength didn't require anger, it required boundaries. The night of the awards arrived. Lila was unusually quiet as she twisted her hair in the mirror, trying to decide if her dress was fancy enough, if her shoes made her legs look taller. Mom, she whispered, do you think they'll be there? I don't know, I said calmly, smoothing the collar of her dress. But we're ready. That's what matters. The venue was a polished room of high ceilings and flattering lights. Cameras lined the entrance, and people in blazers and cocktail dresses moved with confident steps that screamed expectation. Lila squeezed my hand as we walked to our seats near the front. The air thrummed with anticipation and unspoken competition. And then I felt it, the shift. The subtle alert down my spine that comes when you know something significant is approaching. I turned slightly and saw them, my mother, my father, Yvonne, Philip, and Mallory filing into the back rows, dressed as if for a photo shoot, carefully curated from head to toe. My mother's pearls glimmered under the lights, her face perfected, her posture rigid with the expectation of entitlement. Lila's whisper cut through my thoughts. "Mom, are they coming here?" "They're here," I murmured. "But they're not getting what they want." True to form, my mother began her slow, deliberate walk toward the front, aiming for the family section I had designated. An event staff member stepped in front of her with a polite but firm smile. "Ma'am," the staff member said gently, "your seats are in the back." My mother's lips pressed together. "I'm her mother," she said, her voice tight. "We deserve to be there." The staff member didn't flinch. "Your seats are still in the back, ma'am." She tried to step around, but the staffer's presence was immovable. Every movement she made was observed by the family behind her, who shifted uncomfortably as the reality of their diminished control became apparent. Yvonne's smile vanished. Philip leaned in, whispering something to my father, who avoided eye contact. Even Mallory's carefully maintained neutrality seemed to crumble. Lila's small hand squeezed mine, a quiet reminder that the strength we had built wasn't theoretical. It was practical. It existed in every choice, every boundary enforced, every refusal to allow others to dictate our worth. As the program began, the speeches and applause washed over the room. And then my name was called. Lila's eyes met mine, filled with both excitement and that same quiet trust she had shown when she first asked about shame weeks ago. I stood, walked to the stage, and faced a room of people. Cameras caught my every movement, but my focus was singular, telling the story that had been erased, reclaiming the narrative without shouting or spectacle. I began softly. "I'm a single mom. I built this business from a small apartment and a kitchen table, with my daughter as my constant companion and inspiration. 3 years ago, my mother sent me a message in a family group chat, calling me a shame for being a single mom. It said I no longer deserved to be her daughter. That message was shared with my father and siblings, who agreed. The room went still. Not gossip still. Truth still. Eyes widened as they absorbed the words, the reality that someone had been publicly disowned, yet had risen above it. I didn't look toward the back row. I didn't need to. I could feel the impact radiating across the room without acknowledging them. "And here we are," I continued. "We didn't need permission. We didn't need validation. We built anyway. 'Cause when someone tries to diminish you, you don't shrink. You expand." Lila beamed up at me from the front row. Applause broke out, not polite, not family manipulated, but genuine. And in that moment, I understood the lesson my daughter had been learning all along. Power comes not from revenge, but from building a life so strong that those who tried to harm you are rendered powerless. The applause still echoed in my ears long after I stepped off the stage. Lila's small hand gripped mine, her eyes bright with pride and understanding. "Mom, you were so strong," she whispered. I smiled, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. "So are you, sweetheart," I replied, squeezing her hand. In that moment, I realized something powerful. The story was ours to tell, and no one else could rewrite it. Yet, predictably, the family's response was immediate, though not the dramatic confrontation I had expected. Instead, it came in subtle, calculated ways. Yvonne sent me a text from a new number. "Mom wants to make peace. Don't be stubborn." Philip called my assistant with questions about logistics and how Erica was handling everything. Even Mallory appeared briefly in the periphery, attending the same networking events I was at, pretending to be coincidence but clearly hoping to catch a glimpse of me faltering. I didn't respond. I refused to turn their attempts to manipulate into drama. Each time I saw a message or a familiar face, I reminded myself that silence is louder than any argument. My focus remained on Lila and the life we were building. She noticed and she learned. One evening, after Lila had finished her homework, she plopped down on the couch beside me and said, "Mom, everyone keeps talking about you. People are impressed. But why do they care so much what your family thinks?" I looked at her, the weight of years of rejection and judgment flashing through my mind. "Because they've always been used to this story being told for them, honey. But now the story is ours. And people are noticing that we don't need anyone else to validate us." She nodded thoughtfully, leaning against me as if the lesson had fully landed. I realized then that this was bigger than just me proving myself. I was teaching her resilience, the kind that doesn't depend on approval or validation. Meanwhile, the business continued to grow. What started as a simple organizational system had turned into a fully fledged platform for small businesses. Requests were coming from all over, and my inbox overflowed with inquiries I had never imagined possible. Each new client was a small victory, a concrete reminder that life could thrive without the family's support. And with every email, every successful implementation, I built confidence, not arrogance, but the kind that comes from knowing you are capable and worthy. The family, of course, noticed. Whispers reached me through mutual contacts. "Erica's doing so well without anyone. She's really making a name for herself." Passive-aggressive attempts became more transparent, almost desperate. My mother tried one last subtle manipulation. She reached out to the organizer of a new community award program I was attending, hoping to insert herself as part of the story of my success. I caught wind of it through a colleague who had politely asked for clarification about the family's presence. I paused, considering how to respond. I could have blocked it, ignored it, let it slide. But instead, I saw an opportunity. The event was meant to celebrate genuine achievement, not entitlement. I sent a single calm note to the organizer. "The family listed is not authorized. They are not invited and should not approach the stage. Thank you for ensuring the integrity of the event." No emotion. No lecture. Just fact. And facts are harder to manipulate than feelings. Lila watched the email with wide eyes. "You didn't yell at them?" she asked. "No," I said. "Why would I? The truth is enough." Her eyes sparkled with admiration, but more importantly, understanding. She saw that real power didn't need to be performative. It was steady. It was deliberate. It was in every boundary I enforced, every small victory I claimed for us. The week of the event, the family tried again. This time, my mother left a message on Lila's phone using the sweetest tone she could muster. "Hi, Daisy. It's Grandma. Tell your mom I have something special for you. Call me back, okay?" I held the phone like it was radioactive, feeling the familiar surge of anger tempered by clarity. Lila turned to me, her expression a mixture of confusion and frustration. "I don't want anything from someone who erased us," I said calmly. Together, we devised a simple plan. No contact would be acknowledged. No interaction would happen without my explicit permission. The rules were clear: gifts, messages, visits, nothing would enter our lives unless we chose it. This wasn't punishment, it was protection. And Lila began to understand the importance of enforcing boundaries, of refusing to let others dictate her self-worth. By the time we arrived at the event, I felt steady. Lila's hair was carefully twisted into a braid, her dress perfect but comfortable. She squeezed my hand as we stepped into the room filled with blazers, cameras, and an audience that had no idea about the drama lurking behind the scenes. And then, as if on cue, I felt the subtle alert in my spine, the warning that someone from the past was attempting to enter the present. My mother, father, and siblings appeared at the back, strategically placed, hoping for visibility and control. But this time, the staff was prepared. My family's carefully rehearsed performance met immovable boundaries. They had no claim here. Not now. Not ever. I realized, standing there with Lila beside me, that every step I had taken in the past years, from blocking numbers to building a business to protecting her innocence, had led to this. We had grown stronger, more resilient, and our narrative could no longer be hijacked. And for the first time, I truly felt it, the quiet, unshakable confidence of knowing that our story was ours alone. The day of the big partnership launch arrived, and with it, a new sense of anticipation. Lila and I had prepared meticulously, rehearsing presentations, checking every detail, and making sure the environment felt like ours. Company had grown steadily, clients were lining up, and this launch wasn't just about business. It was a declaration that our lives had moved beyond the shadows of judgment and rejection. I had no doubt that my family knew about it. The whispers had already started. Mutual contacts reporting, a cousin's side comment, even a text from Yvonne masked as friendly curiosity. They weren't coming for celebration. They were coming to insert themselves, to claim proximity, to rewrite the story as if their presence mattered. We arrived early. Lila, dressed in a bright blouse that matched her determination, held my hand tightly. "Mom," she said quietly, "do you think they'll try anything?" I smiled down at her. "They might. But we know the rules now. We decide what enters our lives. You, me, and the work we've built, that's what matters." As the venue filled with clients, journalists, and well-wishers, I noticed the familiar shift, a subtle alert down my spine that told me someone with intent was entering the room. And there they were, my mother, my father, Yvonne, Philip, and Molly, strategically seated near the back, their eyes scanning, measuring, calculating. They thought they could influence the narrative simply by existing in the space. Lila's grip on my hand tightened. "Mom, what do we do?" "We show them the truth," I said, steady and calm. Without yelling. Without pleading. Just facts. The launch began. Speeches were given. Introductions made. And then it was my turn. I walked to the center stage, microphone in hand, heart steady but determined. I looked across the room, not at the family in the back, not at the cameras, but at the people who had supported me, the clients and colleagues who had believed in my vision from the start. "I want to share something personal before we dive in," I began. 3 years ago, my family decided I was not worthy of being their daughter because I chose to raise my child as a single mom. They wrote it down, shared it in a group chat, and agreed among themselves that my existence was conditional. They tried to erase me. The room went quiet. Not curious quiet. Not polite quiet. Truth still quiet. People leaned in, feeling the gravity of what I was saying. "And yet," I continued, "here we are. My daughter and I built this company from scratch, from a small apartment and a kitchen table. Every night I stayed awake making sure she had what she needed. Every day I worked to build a life where we could thrive without anyone's approval. And today our lives are ours to control, our story ours to tell." I felt Lila shift beside me. She was glowing, not just from the room's lights, but from understanding the lesson she had absorbed quietly over the years. That strength isn't loud. It's steady. It's deliberate. It's unshakable. Then I paused, letting the weight of my words settle over the audience. 3 years ago, my mother wrote, "All my children brought this family respect except Erica. She chose to be a lowly single mom. I no longer see her as my daughter." The silence that followed was heavy, but no one spoke over it. The room absorbed it, the injustice, the audacity of someone thinking they could define another's worth. And then I revealed the final detail, the one that made everything irrevocably clear. I have the message. And I am the only one who decides who is allowed to be part of our story. No one else gets to claim victory, influence our lives, or rewrite the truth. Some gasps, some quiet murmurs, but mostly attention stayed on the narrative I controlled. I didn't need to call names. Truth stood on its own, unembellished, undeniable. And then the subtlest ripple of chaos appeared in the back row. My mother's face went pale. Yvonne's practiced smile faltered. Philip's jaw tightened. Molly shifted in discomfort. They realized, perhaps for the first time, that their attempts to control or intimidate had failed utterly. They weren't manipulating anything, they were powerless. Lila whispered, "Mom, they look small." "Yes," I said softly. "Because truth shrinks lies." I turned my attention back to the room. The applause came slowly at first, then surged into genuine admiration. Not for revenge, not for drama, but for triumph built on integrity, for resilience that didn't rely on others' approval, for a life reclaimed and a story restored. As I stepped off the stage, Lila hugged me fiercely. "Mom, we did it. They can't touch this," she said. And she was right. The story was ours. Every success, every moment, every lesson we had endured was ours alone. I noticed briefly the family lingering at the back. They said nothing. They tried to smile, to seem as if they had been part of the journey, but their eyes betrayed them. They weren't celebrating. They were witnessing the undeniable proof that their judgment and exclusion had done nothing to stop our growth. That night, after the event, we walked home together in quiet triumph. Lila held my hand, skipping lightly, the lessons fully absorbed. "Mom," she said, "I think I understand now. Strength doesn't need permission." I looked down at her, my chest tight with love and pride. "Exactly, sweetheart. Strength comes from knowing your worth, setting your boundaries, and building a life that cannot be shaken by those who try to diminish you." And for the first time in years, I felt it fully. The freedom of having survived, of having protected what mattered, of having grown despite those who tried to erase us. The family's attempts at control were futile. The story was ours, and no one else could write it. The weeks following the launch were quiet but charged with a new energy. Company grew faster than I had imagined, the client list expanding across cities and even into international markets. I no longer counted every dollar. Instead, I watched our impact grow. And alongside that, Lila blossomed in ways I had only dreamed of. She carried herself with confidence, not arrogance, but a quiet awareness of her own value, her own story. My family tried again, of course. My mother sent another message, this time via a distant cousin. "Erica, we need to reconcile. For Daisy's sake." I read it and simply deleted it. There was no anger, no guilt, just clarity. For years, they had treated our presence as optional. Now the respect and the access was ours to control. Lila sat beside me as I deleted the message. "Mom, are you mad?" she asked. "No, baby," I said. "I'm steady. We don't need them to be calm. We need to be free." And that was the truth. Freedom, not drama, became our guiding principle. One evening, after a particularly long day of client calls and business strategy sessions, Lila tugged at my hand. "Mom, can we take a break?" she asked. Her eyes sparkled with curiosity and mischief. We walked to the park nearby, just the two of us. She ran ahead, laughter echoing, and I watched her with the full weight of pride. 3 years ago, she would have hesitated, unsure if the world was safe. Now she ran freely, knowing we had built a life we controlled. Back at home, I sat at the kitchen table, our original launch pad, the place where so many nights of struggle, planning, and dreaming had happened. Lila climbed into my lap with her homework. "Mom," she said quietly, "do you think they'll ever change?" I held her close. "They might in their own way," I said. "But we can't wait for them. We build for ourselves. For us." Weeks later, a major business award arrived, recognizing our platform as a game changer for small businesses. The local news covered it, highlighting our story not as a tale of family drama, but as a testament to resilience, vision, and determination. Lila sat on the couch beside me as we watched the segment together. "Mom," she said softly, "that's you." "Yes, baby," I said, brushing her hair back. "But more importantly, that's us." And just like that, it felt complete. Not in a flashy, dramatic way, but in a quiet, unshakable sense of accomplishment. Every sleepless night, every challenge, every subtle manipulation from the family, none of it had taken away what we had built. They had tried to define our worth, and we had redefined it ourselves. Months later, the family made one final attempt. My mother appeared at the doorstep, her posture carefully measured, pearls glinting under the sun, with Philip and Yvonne flanking her like reluctant bodyguards. I opened the door slowly, Lila by my side. She looked up at me, her small face steady and unafraid. "Mom," I said calmly, "we don't need help. We don't need permission. And we certainly don't need validation." My mother's eyes flickered, searching for a crack, an opening. None appeared. Philip tried to speak, Yvonne interjected, but every word fell flat. They had lost access long ago, and their presence now was a gesture without power. "I understand you think you can intimidate or persuade," I continued, "but the truth is ours. The life we've built is ours. And no one gets to take it away." Lila, standing tall beside me, added quietly, "We're not lowly. We never were." And that, more than anything, stopped them. The words echoed in the small foyer, final and undeniable. Their attempts to manipulate, to control, to rewrite history were met with a wall of truth and quiet authority. They left eventually, without confrontation, without apology. And the house felt lighter, freer, full of laughter and confidence instead of tension. Lila ran back to her toys, and I sat back at the table, reflecting on the journey. 3 years of persistence, strategy, and patience had led to this moment. Not revenge, not spectacle, but freedom. We had reclaimed our narrative. We had built success and stability without compromise. And most importantly, I had taught Lila to recognize her value, to enforce boundaries, and to hold her head high regardless of anyone's approval. That night, as we prepared for bed, Lila climbed into my lap, her small hands clutching mine. "Mom," she said, "we won." "Yes, baby," I whispered, holding her close. We always were winners. And in that quiet, ordinary moment, the triumph felt complete. Not because the world acknowledged us, though it did, but because we had survived, thrived, and built a life unshakable by those who had tried to erase us. Our story was ours. And it would stay that way.